Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the massive, multi-tiered machinery behind India's wildlife and biodiversity conservation. You know, when we think of conservation, we usually just picture a forest ranger out in the woods or a tiger hiding in the tall grass. But protecting an entire subcontinent's worth of ecological diversity? That takes a massive, underlying engine of laws, institutions, and some incredibly specific recovery programs. So let's open the hood and see exactly how this machine works.
All right, let's quickly look at our roadmap. We've got 4 main stops today: the legal blueprint, the conservation enforcers, global commitments, and finally, protecting iconic species. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The Legal Blueprint.
So India's environmental laws didn't just pop up overnight. It's been a steady, escalating build over the decades. Back in 1972, the Wildlife Protection Act really laid the foundation. Then, by 1980, the Forest Conservation Act stepped in to tightly regulate forest lands. Following the Bhopal gas tragedy, we saw the Umbrella Environment Protection Act in 1986. Fast forward to 2002 for the Biodiversity Act, and finally the National Green Tribunal Act in 2010, which was built to ensure swift environmental justice.
But here's what's really cool. Beneath all those specific acts is something super profound. Conservation in India isn't just considered a good idea, it's literally written into the Constitution. Article 48A tells the state to protect forests and wildlife, while Article 51A makes it a fundamental duty for every single citizen to protect the natural environment. It's not optional. It's a shared national mandate for all of us.
Now, the Wildlife Protection Act is kind of fascinating because it doesn't just throw a blanket over every single animal. It uses a very strict scheduling system. On one extreme, you've got Schedule I. This gives absolute protection and comes with the harshest penalties. This is where your tigers and rhinos sit. But then, on the completely opposite end, there's Schedule V. This actually lists abundant animals, like mice and crows, that are legally allowed to be hunted. It's all about calculated gradations.
Okay, so the laws are on the books. But honestly, a blueprint is just paper without muscle. Who actually steps in when a forest gets illegally cleared or an endangered species is poached?
That brings us to Section 2, the Conservation Enforcers.
Meet the National Green Tribunal, or the NGT. This specialized body has some serious teeth. They're mandated to dispose of cases within 6 months, which is incredibly fast. Plus, they operate on the polluter pays principle. Basically, if you damage the environment, restitution comes straight out of your pocket. And we're talking huge numbers here. Fines can go up to 10 crore rupees just for individuals. So yeah, they don't mess around.
Then, for the really dark stuff, organized wildlife smuggling and poaching, you have the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. These guys aren't just out patrolling the woods. They are a centralized intelligence hub. They build databanks on organized crime, advise customs authorities at the borders, and team up with international agencies to tackle global wildlife trafficking.
And to make sure the biodiversity actually gets implemented, there's a strict 3-tier setup. At the top, you have the National Biodiversity Authority. Below them, the state biodiversity boards. But honestly, the real magic happens right at the local level, with the biodiversity management committees. They're the ones ensuring that the traditional, on-the-ground ecological knowledge of local communities is actually protected.
Section 3, Global Commitments.
We can't forget that India's ecological house is deeply tied to the rest of the world. Take the Convention on Biological Diversity, or CBD. It has 3 straightforward but massive goals: conserve biological diversity, use it sustainably, and this is a big one, make sure the benefits from genetic resources are shared fairly and equitably. This global treaty is exactly what pushed India to create its own domestic Biodiversity Act.
So all this talk about bureaucracy and treaties begs the question, how does a piece of paper in New Delhi actually save an animal in the Himalayas or out in the swamps of Assam? Let's hit the ground and see these laws in action.
Section 4, Protecting Iconic Species.
Just look at this number, 2,967. That was India's wild tiger population recorded in 2018. That is an absolute triumph, making up 80% of all wild tigers globally. Thanks to Project Tiger, which started way back in 1973 using a core and buffer strategy, tiger populations have rebounded spectacularly.
And keeping them safe has gone totally high-tech. They use a specialized software called M-Stripes. It's an intensive monitoring system used across tiger reserves.
Forest guards aren't just looking for paw prints anymore, they're logging spatial data and tracking ecological status digitally. It's a real game changer.
This intensive approach also applies to Project Elephant. India holds over 60% of the global Asian elephant population, and since they need massive amounts of land, a huge part of this project is securing narrow corridors so herds can migrate safely. They even maintain 10 specific sites under an international program called MIKE to closely track and stop illegal killing.
Now check this out, the Asiatic lion. They are confined to just 5 protected areas in Gujarat, and biologically, they're quite different from their African cousins. They actually have this prominent fold of skin running along their belly that African lions just don't have. Because their population is so geographically isolated, authorities have to focus intensely on habitat improvement and disease control just to keep them viable.
The sheer variety of these programs is wild. Up in the grasslands of Assam, you have the Indian one-horned rhino, where 85% of their global population lives. They've been the target of ambitious translocation programs, like IRV 2020. And then, over in the Ganges River, something extraordinary happened. The blind river dolphin was actually granted non-human personhood. It literally has the legal right to exist in a clean aquatic ecosystem. No way, right?
But, unfortunately, it's not all victories. Take the great Indian bustard. It's this heavy, ostrich-like bird that is critically endangered. Because of severe habitat loss in open grasslands and their extremely slow reproduction rates, they are literally pushed right to the brink of extinction. Projects in Rajasthan are desperately trying to build up captive breeding populations to save them.
And then there's the vulture crisis. Nature's ultimate cleanup crew was almost entirely wiped out by a single veterinary drug called diclofenac. When vultures ate the carcasses of cattle that had been treated with it, it proved totally fatal. Thankfully, the government completely banned the drug, but pulling these critically endangered species, like the Indian long-billed and white-rumped vultures, back from the edge has been an uphill battle.
We also have to mention the extreme ends of the spectrum. Up in the freezing, high-altitude Himalayas, you've got inclusive recovery programs for the elusive snow leopard. And way down in our warm coastal waters, there are task forces dedicated to protecting the critically endangered dugong, or sea cow, by preserving their vital seagrass beds from destructive fishing.
But listen, ultimately, this entire conservation machine rests on one absolutely crucial principle. The 2006 National Environmental Policy hit the nail on the head. We have to ensure that local communities get better livelihoods from protecting nature than from destroying it. If the people living right on the fringes of these forests don't see the benefit, all the laws and tribunals we talked about just fall apart.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. With this massive blueprint of laws and enforcers working tirelessly out there, where do you fit in? How do we all ensure these iconic species are still around for the next generation? Remember Article 51A. It's not just a nice idea. It's our constitutional duty. Think about it, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.